Hi, I'm Tony Northrup, and for my photography buying guide, I'd like to go over the newly announced Sony A7s. This is a really exciting and kind of bizarre still photography camera and video camera. So let's dive into first the still photography features. First of all, the most shocking thing is that it has a 12.2 megapixel sensor. That's 1/3 of the resolution of the 36 megapixel A7R. Now, Sony is known for making these super high megapixel sensors, so why on earth would they go to a 12 megapixel sensor? And the answer is that the higher resolution you go, the less light that each pixel gets. So they wanted to make big pixels that are gathering lots of light each. And each one of these 12 megapixels will be gathering 3 times more light than the 36 megapixels in the A7R. That means that you're going to be getting far less noise in the images. And they're bragging that it's going to work up to ISO 400,000. And that's not a native ISO though. They put that in all their marketing material, but they call that an extended ISO. The native ISO is about 100,000. That means that if you record a raw still image, the highest you can go is really 100,000, and then it basically bumps it digitally a couple more stops. It means that you won't capture any more data at ISO 400,000 than you would at ISO 100,000. You'll just be cranking up the noise and exposure a little bit. I still find it useful, and that's a pretty remarkable spec. It gets a terrible 2.5 frames per second. And this, I cannot explain. Why would they go with 2.5 frames a second when they're perfectly capable of making much faster mirrorless cameras? My little A6000 here, 11 frames a second. The new A7s, 2.5 frames a second. The lower megapixels should actually have allowed them to use a higher frame rate because it means there's less data to move around. But there you have it, it's 2.5 frames a second. But frankly, this isn't much of a still camera anyway. It's the video features that are going to get you excited. Another interesting aspect of it is that it works all the way down, the autofocus system works all the way down to -4 EV. Now, as a point of reference, if you're not familiar with the EV scale, what they call 0 EV is a 1 second exposure at ISO 100 at f1 on your lens. That amount of light would be considered 0 EV, and that's quite dark. So going -4 EV, that's like a 30-second exposure with an f1.4 lens at ISO 100. So if you ever do night photography, you might have a sense for just how dark that would be. That means that basically it should be able to autofocus in the wilderness under starlight, even when the moon isn't out. That's really very dark. Now, let's go on to talk about the video features a little bit more. It will do 4K at 30 frames a second, which is important because we're going to start seeing a wave of new cameras that are 4K capable. For example, Panasonic recently announced the GH4, which should be out at the end of April, and we're really excited about it because we love these Panasonic Micro Four Thirds cameras for our video work. And that camera is going to be at about $1,600. And I have a feeling that the Sony is announced specifically to kind of stem the tide of people switching from Sony to Panasonic. They wanted to kind of catch that market. But there's a big catch with this Sony's 4K recording, and that's that it doesn't do it to an SD card. What? It's a DSLR-like camera using the DSLR kind of video workflow, but it doesn't record to a memory card. It only lets you record through the HDMI out. So basically you need to wire it into an external recorder. Lots of us have been using these Atomos Ninja recorders. Well, Atomos is also announcing a new recorder specifically for the A7s. They're calling it the Shogun because I guess they like this kind of old Japanese theme. The Shogun will record beautiful 422 ProRes video from the A7s. But it's going to be a couple grand. They haven't announced prices for anything. It's going to be at least a couple of grand. Plus you have to buy yourself a hard drive and stick it in there. And suddenly the whole benefit of using a mirrorless camera for video kind of disappears, because the benefit is that it's nice and lightweight. But you have to have an external recorder if you're going to be doing 4K. That means you have this other recorder, and you also need a way to hold them together, which means you now need a rig. I have a picture that I'll show you later. But suddenly you have a big and heavy setup. You have multiple devices that need separate batteries charged. You have a cable connecting them. It sounds like there are lots of things that can fail, and a lot of professional videographers do use this workflow, but a lot of professional videographers record directly to the SD card. And in fact, just about every casual and amateur photographer will record to the SD card. So the fact that the A7S is missing SD card recording is huge. The GH4 has it. The Blackmagic Cinema 4K camera will record to SSD cards that you plug, or SSD drives that you plug right into the card, into the camera, instead of needing a separate recorder. The Sony is the only one here that requires a separate recorder. For everybody else, it's optional. I think that's a huge and painful oversight. Why would they do that? I think they're rushing to get it out to market. And they rush a little too quickly. I think they should have held off until they had a processor that could have encoded it at a bit rate that they could have saved to the SD card. Even though it would be less than ideal, it's something, right? So it will also do 1080p at 60 frames a second. Which has become pretty standard. Even my little Nikon D3300 will do this. Because of the lower 12 megapixel resolution, it's going to be a little lower than that once you crop to 16:9, but there's no pixel binning. Pixel binning is a process of taking, say, 4 pixels or 16 pixels, a group of pixels, and basically electronically combining them into a single pixel. But each pixel is bigger. That means you'll get some better image quality. It means you won't be losing quite as many electrons and photons because, well, there's no little edges between the pixels. So anyway, it's good. It means you'll have a little bit less noise. This camera supports the Sony technology called S-Log2, and this is basically a way to cram a massive amount of dynamic range into the video. Their algorithm says that it provides 1300% wider dynamic range, and that's valid. What it basically boils down to is that you're going to get 3 to 4 stops more highlights. So you'll be able to recover highlights that are blown out by 3 or 4 stops. And as a videographer, outdoors, working with the bright sky, that's really, really important because often you'll have your main subject in the foreground under shade or a diffuser, so they have nice flattering light on their face. But then the sky will be completely blown out. And our eyes have this crazy amount of dynamic range that lets us see all that normally. But to a camera, the sky would just appear blown out and white, and that would look ugly. And you don't see that in movies because they use professional cameras that have this crazy dynamic range. So this Sony A7S should be able to provide that professional level of dynamic range, allow you to capture deep shadows and bright skies and have everything look natural and beautiful. Another minor point is that the A7S supports time codes and user bits. And if you need that, you probably already know what it is, but basically it's something to help some professional workflows get things synced up. Lots of professionals don't rely on time codes anymore, but some of them do, and clearly as a nod to those professionals, they've included that. Here is one of the press photos of the A7S fully outfitted in a crazy rig. You can see they've got, this is probably the new Atomos gear wired up here, and an external microphone here. You can run a mic in, but you can see you have to like jack it in through the top there. It's kind of a pain. The fact that they're releasing pictures with these huge gear setups is showing that they're trying to attract the professional audience. Now at the same time, Sony announced an important lens, the 28-135 f4 lens. It's a power zoom lens. And again, with most of our DSLRs, the zooms are manual. You literally turn it and it mechanically changes the focal length of the lens. A power zoom, there's a little switch and it zooms in and out nice and smooth. And everybody hates these power zooms if you do still photography. But if you do video, the power zooms are much smoother. And though most videographers don't like to zoom, if you are going to zoom, the power zoom just looks better. Talk a little bit more about the Atomos Shogun. It has a 7-inch screen, records 422, 10-bit, and you can either record to a single SSD or you can RAID multiple conventional magnetic hard drives. I think most of us are probably going to be using an SSD, especially if you're traveling around with it, because those SSDs are so durable. And like that last lens, it's under development. So we have a couple of pictures of it, but it's not real yet. It should be out near the end of the summer. Sony also announced that their XLR Adapter Kit is currently under development. Basically, this will allow you to connect XLR cables and use professional audio with the camera. I'm hoping it's going to be a bolt-on setup like the GH4 is going to be offering by Sony. Here is another press photo of a handsome gentleman using a slightly lighter weight kit with the Sony. But again, you can see he can't simply record with the Sony like I could with this XT1. No, he's got to have that external monitor if he's going to do 4K. And frankly, it's the 4K that we're really interested in, right? I think this will be an amazing 1080p camera though, because it will be able to offer noise levels that are basically unheard of. You should be able to record in near darkness completely cleanly. Now, the audience for that, I have to question, because professionals will just bring in their own lights and they'll be able to shoot at ISO 100 the whole time. But maybe documentary film workers or people who need to record in the city. So, in summary, I think the A7S is going to be a really interesting camera. I think Sony rushed it to market. We don't have any raw samples yet, so I have some sample pictures available from the press, but they're low resolution, and that basically tells you nothing at all. Nonetheless, I'm excited both for the camera and for the sensor, because I'm hoping this sensor will make its way into some other cameras. I think it would be an amazing sensor for professional level DSLRs. If you like this video and you want to see more, including more about the new A7S as that develops, please click like and subscribe for a ton more videos about Sony cameras and other cameras as well. Thanks so much.